TYT interviews. Guess what kind of interview we have? You know it. Awesome. Okay, Scott Aukerman's with us. Not a big deal. Co-creator of Funny or Die series called Between Two Ferns. You might have heard of it. With Zach Galafianakis and President Obama. Is he on as a regular or?
I mean, as regular as one gets on Between Two Ferns, which is once.
Okay, we'll call him, co-host.
So he's a regular, co-host.
Right, that's right.
As well.
He's also a writer and co-creator of Comedy Bang Bang podcast and IFC series.
Comedy Bang Bang, Comedy Bang Bang, Comedy Bang Bang, Comedy Bang Bang.
We here at Comedy Bang Bang love random humor, don't we, Reggie?
Next to offbeat, it's my favorite kind of humor.
So Scott and I have a lot in common. We're both 45, so I have a rule, Scott, on the show, where if I don't want to do anything I don't want to do, I go, I'm 45. Like
Really?
that. Okay. I'm just too old not to.
45-year-old man. I do that sometimes. Yeah. Look, I'm a 45-year-old man. I'm not going to stay up past 7:30 p.m.
I'm 45.
Yeah.
I'm
exactly.
45. Okay. So we also had public access shows that we started our careers with. Yours was called Centurion Highlights.
Centurion Highlights, which is an odd name for a show until you realize that our high school mascot was the Centurions.
Oh, okay. That's a shame because it would have been more badass if it wasn't.
But what a strange name for a show. If you just Centurion Highlights, what does that even mean?
That's why it would be really funny.
Yeah, that's true. It's not a bad name.
And you also know my old friend Bob Odenkirk.
Now, where do you know Bob from?
I've met him twice.
Oh, okay. Hey, he's
Old
a
friend. That's why he's a regular.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so how did you get started in comedy?
Wow. I weirdly was trying to be a writer and didn't think I was very funny. And I tried writing a Friends sample script at one point, and I wrote a bunch of jokes. I was like, these aren't professional jokes, and I threw it away. And then I was writing dramas, and I sent it to my friend, and she read it, and she said, this is terrible.
Off to a good start.
Yeah, but you're really funny in natural life. Why don't you try to do comedy? My friend has a show at the Comedy Store, and why don't you just try to do it? And so I went up one night, and that was a show with Bob Odenkirk, and Mary Lynn Ricecub was her friend, who's Chloe on 24. And there were people like Margaret Cho and Janine Garofalo and a whole bunch of people, and I did really well and just kind of fell into it that way.
That's interesting. We started out in that sense then in the opposite direction, because I tried comedy writing for a while, right? I thought I could be funny.
Oh, okay.
You thought you couldn't be funny, right? And
what were you trying to write?
So I started out actually as a TV writer down in Miami for a really unique show called The Times. It was a Barry Diller project. USA Broadcasting was trying to build out the 7 network.
Okay.
And it was kind of the Daily Show meets 60 Minutes. And that was really before Jon Stewart took over the Daily Show.
So it was like a longer Daily Show.
Yeah, no, it was a super weird show because we'd write these funny things that was the news, and then we'd pitch to a super serious investigative report about how they're ruining the Native American artifacts in Miami.
So a lot of mixed tones.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we won 1,000 Emmys.
Oh wow!
Right, but not for nothing I did.
Right.
Okay, for all the investigative reporting. So then I got emboldened because that show was a little funny, and I wrote it with the anchor of the show, Ben Mankiewicz, and who later started the Young Turks with me. And then so when I got to LA, I was like, okay, maybe I'm a comedy writer, right? And I got one job, a pilot, where they're, okay, all right, now go, write some jokes, kid. And I was like, Jesus, I gotta write jokes?
What are jokes?
That's crazy because I'm, at best, marginally funny in a normal conversation, right? But when you go to sit down and write jokes, it's
a different skill.
Hard, yeah.
So at what point in the middle of the pilot did you just say, okay, I'm not doing this anymore? Or did you write them and actually turn them in?
No, I was mortified. I turned them in, but I was a job. I needed a job, and it was like, and they'd look at him like, okay, we'll get him again tomorrow.
Right.
It's incredible how schlocky the jokes feel when you write them out. For me, because I'm not good at it.
Yeah, I guess everyone kind of feels that way, though, the first few times, I don't have anything original in my mind to say, and then you just kind of keep at it and keep doing it. So I don't know, if you would have continued, maybe you would have been one of America's top sitcom writers right now.
Well, those guys get paid a lot of money, so God bless their
That's what
hearts.
It's all about, isn't it?
The money? Of course. I got into public access for the money.
Yeah, that's why I started.
So I want to go back to your public access show in a second, but first, you mentioned you went to the Comedy Store, right?
Yeah.
So what'd you do? You did like open mic night, or
No,
what'd you...
it was a booked show that Mary Lynn and her partner were booking, and basically I was in a duo act with my friend, and we just did what you thought was going to be really bad improv. We called ourselves the Fun Bunch, and which was ironic because there were just two of us. And we were supposedly an improv troupe from the Valley. And then it just kind of disintegrated into the weirdest thing that we could think of, and just like horrible stuff with each of us like yelling at each other and slapping each other in the face. And
Well, that
I don't
sounds
know, it was
fun.
very bizarre and right up everyone's alley. And the second time that I performed, Bob Odenkirk was in the back of the crowd, and he was like, "Hey guys, you're really funny. You should write on my show, Mr. Show." And then so we started writing on Mr. Show.
All right, that's great.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, I guess so. And do you get a sense that, did you get better with time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first started, when I went into Mr. Show, I was very nervous. Because I'd written, at that point then, I'd done comedy a lot, live comedy up till starting on the show at that point for a good number of years. And then I'd written a comedic screenplay. But I was very insular in my room, kind of writing my little jokes. And then I had to write scripts for Bob to like prove that I could do it and be on his show. And so I wrote those alone in my room, but I was very nervous about the being in a room with everyone and sort of like being in a room with Bob and David and having them, like ask me to say a joke right there in front of them, I mean, there was nothing more terrifying to me. And then I quickly found my first day that I'm just not shy about telling people what I think and just like, always talking. And so I think to the detriment of the show at a certain point, I was like...
We're back to being similar.
Yeah, very bossy, always talking and always just kind of... So, what I thought about myself was not what ended up being true about myself.
So that's interesting. So it takes me a while to warm up to that. Eventually, I become bossy, but but in the beginning, especially with the writing the jokes, I was terrified that they were gonna just be like, you got to kind of leave the building right now. Right?
You have to get to a certain point. I mean, I worked on the Oscars this year with Chris Rock, and just typical, very nervous about it going in, and you just kind of have to get to a point in your mind where you don't care at all anymore.
I think that's the trick for a lot of life, actually.
Yeah, and so I just kind of went in there, and I was really busy. I'm filming my show, and so I was like, I didn't really have time to do it, so that kind of put me in the mindset of not caring. So, and I'd never met Chris before. That's another reason why I should have been very nervous about it, but I just, kind of got in there and just started talking away and blabbing away and pitching jokes, and I think you just have to get into a mindset where you're not afraid anymore if people will say, "Hey, that's dumb," or that won't happen.
Well, having had thousands, maybe millions of people call me dumb, I'm past that point.
Really? What? And was that all like recently, or was that
fairly recently?
All in a short amount of time? Or?
Well, when you have an opinion online, people will have opinions back.
Oh, really? You don't say.
So that's how it turns out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got to get on the internet and find out about that thing.
So, yeah, I mean, like Hillary Clinton gets offended that some supporters of Bernie Sanders said some mean things. Yeah, welcome to the internet.
Yeah.
That's like, wow, the Bernie Sanders supporters must be really the bad ones on the internet.
Right, yeah.
Right. The guys who support the most liberal senator in the country are the ones that you got to worry about on the internet. Anyway, so are you the one who wrote the Hollywood's racist joke?
It's interesting when you work on something like that. You don't really even. It's hard to even say like who wrote what on something like that. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the style of what we did on the Oscars was just Chris like talking about stuff out loud and kind of like us kind of giving him a soundboard for stuff he wanted to talk about. So it was a little different than when I did the Emmys this year with Andy Samberg. That was very much where my whole staff for my show wrote on the show. And that was very much us like writing bits for him and writing jokes and providing him with material. With Chris, it's a little different where he just kind of wanted to figure out what he was going to say, and we were just there to kind of go, well, what about this or what about this?
So I think a lot of the folks in the audience have no idea about what happens behind the scenes and the writing process, et cetera. So to what degree are the jokes the comedians and to what degree are they written?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, sometimes I guess a comedian wouldn't want anyone to know that someone else wrote stuff, but I mean, it's impossible to. They're right there in the credits, you know. I think every comedian kind of takes a different sort of level of what they use from the writers. So I think when you're a writer on one of those big award shows, what I found out is your job is mainly to make the host feel bulletproof and to feel like they can go out there and they got a ton of material and they got a lot of stuff to say. And so a lot of times, especially with Chris, it really wasn't about even writing stuff for him to do as much as he felt confident going in with what he was going to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know. It's funny. People have no idea how TV works. That's part of what we try to do is explain what goes on behind the scenes, both in politics, TV, whatever else might happen. So like they think that you go on late night shows and that conversation organically happens. No, that's pre-produced.
Right. A lot of talk shows, everything is written in them, which is really interesting because in my talk show, I do the opposite, where I don't tell anyone anything about what we're going to talk about before we do it. And I have, you know, I generally give them a sense of what's going to happen on the show. But as far as the questions go, and that's the same with the Between Two Ferns stuff, we don't tell the people anything about what they're going to hear so that we can get a really genuine reaction from them.
See, to me, that sounds perfectly rational. I think the audience thinks that's what normally happens. But you guys, that almost never happens.
When you
right?
go on a talk show, your conversation has already gone through a segment producer who sometimes calls you up and says, "Okay, so tell me about anything funny that's happened to you recently."
Right,
and you're supposed to sit there and go, "I don't know." And you know that you usually have like 3 of those conversations where someone goes over your talking points about what you're going to talk about. You know, I did the Seth Meyers show about a year ago, and it was so great because the minute I got out there, I know him a bit. We just went wildly off script, and he and I switched places, and I got behind his desk, and we just started improvising a little bit. And it's so much more fun to do that, I think, than an interview, which is just very prescribed already.
Right. Improvising sounds like you've described the entirety of the Young Turks' history.
Yes.
That's all we've ever done is improv.
We didn't talk about what we were going to talk about.
Yeah. So I'm very curious about from your start to success, how that happened. But before we get there, let's go back to Centurion highlights.
Centurion highlights.
So what was that?
That was when I was in high school. There was a sort of public access class that you could take where you would do a talk show that was centered on issues having to do with the school. So we were the Cypress Centurions, and my friend Craig hosted it, and it was sort of like, you know, I would imagine like a Daily Show before a Daily Show, where he sat behind a desk and he like very grimly, you know, read about issues having to do with the school dress code or something like that. And then they asked me if I wanted to do something, and I was very into Letterman at the time. This was 1985, so very into early Letterman. So I basically just came in and used their public access facilities to start straight up doing like Letterman ripoff bits. And it was interesting because I showed one of them at the UCB Theater in LA recently, where we were supposed to bring embarrassing things from our past. And I brought this little piece I did when I was 15, and the host of it, after I showed it, was like, "You were supposed to bring embarrassing things, not stuff you would be doing now." I was like, "Oh, I guess I haven't changed all that much."
You see, that's funny because a lot of people look at my old public access tapes from when I did it in Arlington, Virginia, and go, "Oh, that's so embarrassing." And I'm like, "No, I kind of like it."
Yeah. I
I
mean,
thought that was pretty good, actually.
yeah, really? People think they were embarrassing back then?
Yeah. The only thing embarrassing was that I was a Republican back then, and so that was
what happened? How'd you get over to the other side?
Well,
What's the life change?
George W. Bush happened.
Oh.
The Iraq War happened, and then torture happened, and then I kind of peeled back what the party was actually about, and so this is a long process that culminated in me voting for Gore, who was the first Democrat I ever voted for. But that was a little simpler. That I hadn't peeled the whole onion at that point. At that point, I was like, I watched the debates and I was like, I want to vote for a Republican. I voted Republican my whole life. But that guy is just too stupid.
So you must have voted for George H.W. Bush,
Yep.
which was the first president I bet you ever voted for.
I think that's right. Yep.
Because that was in 1988. You must have been 18
That's
years
exactly
old.
right. That's exactly right. Yep.
And then you would have voted for...
Oh, no, my bad. I didn't get a chance to vote for him. I hadn't become a naturalized citizen.
Oh, you weren't a natural... Oh, okay.
I became
interesting.
naturalized citizen in 90.
Okay, so then in 1992, you must have voted for...
I voted for Bush over Clinton.
Right, okay.
George H.W. Bush over Clinton.
great.
And then I voted for Bob Dole. Actually, I think I missed voting that day, but I would have voted for
You
Bob
would have
Dole.
voted for Bob Dole. Okay.
Right, so-
You would have been one of the only people.
Yeah, I was one of those 7 guys.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's how, but people still liked it, because it was. I did a show that was like weirdly conservative, but it wasn't like those angry conservatives
Right.
who were like, "Oh, the gays are ruining the country," right? Like I was socially liberal. Half the
Right.
show was about
There
sex.
should be a different party that's like socially liberal and, I
That
don't
party, if it had existed back in the day,
That's what
would
you-
have won every election.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Anyway.
Socially liberal, fiscally conservative. And then, the final layer was realizing, oh no, they've been lying about everything, right? They're not fiscally conservative. They've never balanced the budget.
Right.
Last Republican president to balance the budget was Eisenhower. So every time they come in, they turn surpluses into giant deficits. That's because they give tax cuts to the rich and yada, yada, yada. And so by the end, I was like mortified I'd ever been a Republican.
Right. As one of the rich, I like it. But I like the tax cuts, but
So that's why that's that great Charles Barkley quote.
what's that?
Back when he was a Republican, his grandmother asked him, "Charles, why are you a Republican? They're only for the rich." He's like, "Grandma, I am rich." So, and then he, just like me, right around the Iraq War, was like, "This is crazy. I'm not for this."
Right,
And he's
yeah.
like, and then they asked him, he had another great quote, "When did you stop being a Republican?" He's like, "When they went nuts." Right? And just about that simple.
Right. So that's your story.
That's my
in a
story.
nutshell.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now let's go to how you went from, hey, you did your stand-up, you got your shot with Bob Odenkirk. Then how do you jump to the next level where you're doing all these amazing things?
It was around after Mr. Show ended, and I was, writing some movies with Bob Odenkirk, and I was writing some films. I worked a little for DreamWorks Animation. I worked on the movie Shark Tale and stuff. But I was basically got into a rut in my career where I was writing a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows that would never get made. So you'd spend, 3 months out of your life working really hard on a script, and then you would turn it in. They'd go, okay, we're not making this. So I would do 3 of those a year, and it was kind of depressing. And so at a certain point, I was still producing a live show in LA at the UCB Theater called Comedy Deathray. And I was putting a lot of energy into that. We would do crazy shows. We would do like all-night shows that would start at 7 in the evening and end at 8:30 in the morning. And we would have haunted houses to lead you into the show and like all this crazy stuff. I was putting all my creative energy in that. And then I just started doing a podcast based on that show where I would have the comedians who were going to be on that show that Tuesday. I would have them on the podcast. And that was just for fun, and I was not getting paid for it. And that became really popular and became the template for what I've been doing now, the Comedy Bang Bang podcast, which is just me as an interviewer talking to a celebrity and then talking to a comedian playing a fake celebrity. So that's what the show is like the comedian's not even a fake celebrity sometimes, but just a fake weirdo person.
Right,
So if you
right.
watch the TV show, that's what we do is I'll have, Joseph Gordon-Levitt on the show and then also a comedian playing a fake person. So and then we all talk to each other. So it's a very unique format. And I just started doing that for fun for free, and it snowballed into, everything I've been doing now.
Okay, so that is super unique. For those who haven't seen it, so it's you, Joseph Gordon-Levitt being himself,
Right.
and then a comedian being Bob from Nebraska.
Yeah, so Paul F. Tompkins will come in and he'll be playing Werner Herzog or Andrew Lloyd Webber, or even stranger people who are not celebrities. Lauren Lapkus will come in as like a fake person named Whitney Peeps, and she's just like a really bizarre person. You'll have to get to know like why she's bizarre. So it's like the second guest on a talk show is usually like a lesser known person.
Right.
But the part that's interesting to me is like watching a celebrity like, a Kevin Bacon, who's coming up on the show this season, having to talk to a really strange person as well. It's like something you don't see on TV all that much.
Yeah, I was just on Paul F. Tompkins' show on
No, You Shut Up.
No, You Shut Up.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Super Bowl Sunday is coming up. Who's it gonna be? The Carolina Panthers, or the Denver Broncos? What sound does a Bronco make?
A horse's sound?
Oh, clippy clop, clippy clop, clippy clop, clippy clop.
Not really. No.
Okay.
They got hot dogs there, like the
You can't eat them. They're puppets.
No, they are. I tried, and
Right.
it turns out you
Yeah,
can't.
you shouldn't
I wish
do
you'd
that.
have told me that ahead of
Right.
time. But that was a fun show. He's got a really
it's a
fun
great show. Yeah.
So, how'd you get hooked up with Zach to do Between Two Ferns?
Zach and I knew each other from comedy, and we knew each other, hadn't really worked all that much together. And then I had this pilot at Fox, this late night pilot that I was trying to do, and I knew I wanted to do something with him. So I called him up and I said, hey, if I give you 5 minutes on this show, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I've always wanted to do like a public access kind of thing, because he started in public access as well. And I really want to call it Between Two Ferns. That's all he had, was the title. And he had the look. Because he, working in public access, always, it would make him laugh that every interview was just two chairs sitting between two ferns. And
I never understood the need for the ferns.
Right,
But they were right. They were religious about the ferns.
Right, but because visually it breaks up the black background or something.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So that was all he had. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I've also been talking to Michael Cera about doing something. Do you want to do it together? And he said, oh, okay, that sounds like it would be good. And Mike really wanted to do that. So we were shooting in a basement, I remember at the time, at this studio that we were shooting at. And so we just went down in the basement, and Zach and Mike Cera sort of improv through this thing with like me shouting jokes from the other room by the monitors. And we did it for about like 2 hours, and went, okay, I think there was something there. And then our editor, Daniel Strange, took it away and cut it into this really funny 5-minute piece, which we watched and we're like, it makes us laugh, but I don't know who would like this.
And then 2002, I actually made my way into the States.
2002,
Yeah.
after 9/11.
So the pilot never ended up going forward. So again, just because we thought it was funny, we put it up on the internet on Funny or Die, which was a new site at the time, just, not expecting anything to happen with it or anyone to watch it. And like millions and millions of people watched that first one with Michael Cera, and we were like, I have no idea why people liked it, but that's great, okay. And we thought that was it. We were people would say, are you going to do another one? We were like, why? We did it. We did that one. What do you mean? We would do another one. What does that mean?
Right.
So then Jimmy Kimmel wanted to do one, and we were like, I guess we could, but we already did it. So we did one for Jimmy Kimmel.
Maybe loosen up a little bit.
It's nice and warm, just the way I like it.
For his show, and that one wasn't that great because we found that we didn't do it in the basement at that time. We did it at his studio with like 100 people watching. His whole crew was watching, and it was just a different experience.
It made it less awkward.
Yeah, it was a very different. We were like playing to the crowd and stuff like that. So we did that one. We were like, I don't think we'll do another one of these. And then John Hamm called us and said, hey, do you want to do another one? We said, okay, we'll try one more, but we got to go back to the basement.
Right.
But we couldn't find a basement anymore, but we found a shed. So, like a tool shed.
I'm amused by these guys who are relatively to really famous, can't find a basement, looking for a shed in
Couldn't
LA.
find a basement in LA, but we did find a tool shed. So we
Okay.
found a tool shed. So that third one was done in a tool shed. And that one was really fun. And we were like, I think we could do more of these. And then Natalie Portman called and wanted to do it. And we did it in the same shed. And that one was incredibly popular because of her, fame. And so, at that point we were like, okay, I think we have something here that we could keep going with.
See, that's interesting because at some point you pick up a momentum of your own. I mean, you wouldn't have imagined, however many years earlier in your career that John Hamm and Jimmy Kimmel and Natalie Portman are calling you like, oh, come on, please do this thing with me, right?
Right, yeah. It was bizarre the people that have called trying to get on the show, and we've turned down a lot of people what the cool thing about Between Two Ferns to me right now is we only do them if we want to do them. So there have been a couple in the history. We've only done about 15 to 20, I think. There have been a couple where we've felt like we only did that because someone wanted us to do it, or it was expected of us to put out a new video, and we said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're only going to do them when we want to do them. And that's led to great stuff like Obama, and the Brad Pitt one that was the last one we did was so much fun, and that was just from him going, "Come on, guys, let's do one." And we're like, "All right, let's do it." So
that's a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Closest we've gotten is Quentin Tarantino calling and saying, "Come on, let's do an interview."
Oh, that's
and I was
great.
like, "Oh, that's neat. Okay, yeah,
great.
sure. Okay, twist my arm." How did the President Obama one come together?
It came together really fast, and we couldn't believe it was going to happen the entire time. We'd been chasing him for about 4 years, trying to get him on the show. At one point, we heard it might happen, and I think maybe it was going to happen through Oprah or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but for 4 years we'd heard, oh, maybe he'll do it, and then he would back out. So at that point, 4 years later, when we got a call from Funny or Die saying, if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen this week, we kind of had been burned so many times, we were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, it's going to happen. So Zach and I got together, and we were like, all right, let's write some jokes for this. This isn't going to happen, but let's just see what happens. And then it just came together like so fast that even when we were in the White House, we were kind of like, okay, this is not... He's going to walk in, or an advisor's going to walk in and say, are you guys kidding? This is not happening. No, we're not doing this.
That they were pranking you the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So until he actually walked in the room and sat down to do it, Zach and I were both saying, this is getting canceled. So, and then he sat down and actually did it. Yeah.
I have to know, what is it like to be the last black president?
Seriously? What's it like for this to be the last time you ever talked to a president?
It must kind of stink, though, that you can't run, 3 times.
No, actually, I think it's a good idea. If I ran a third time, it'd be sort of like doing a third Hangover movie. Didn't really work out very well, did it?
When the video came out, what we then realized was, oh, this is something no other sitting president has ever done. Just the fact that no other sitting president had ever been in a video, like an internet video, was unique. The fact that Obama had agreed to be in a jokey fake talk show video was crazy, So I guess for those 4 years, we were just kind of like, Obama, come do the show, thinking it's no big deal. But
Right.
once I actually went to the White House and saw the steps that it had to go through in order to get him in that chair, I kind of realized why it would take that long.
I mean, I hate to break your heart, but Clinton was on my public access show in Arlington.
Oh, very
so,
nice.
yeah,
really?
I kind of
while
did that
he
one
was
first.
while he was there.
And while I was a Republican, no, he did not come on. But
didn't? Oh, okay.
no, are you kidding me? That would have been a huge deal.
Oh my gosh.
The thing is, you could have been a YouTube star.
Yeah.
And so because back when we did public access because there wasn't any other
Because there wasn't
alternative.
YouTube, yeah.
Right.
If back and I thank the good Lord Jesus up there that I did not become a YouTube star, because I think that's embarrassing, or a Vine star or something. But yeah, back when I was 15, that would have been what we would have done.
You could have been PewDiePie.
You know what I mean? And and I would have had the hunger for it too at 15, the hunger for fame that all those YouTube stars have.
No question.
So yeah, it's
But those Vine guys, I respect them because I don't know how in the world you could be funny in 6 seconds.
No, I mean it's a special skill that only applies to Vine. I've found.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I am really glad that I was able to kind of stop what I was doing and then kind of get better at what I was doing in the privacy of LA clubs, before actually having a show, because I think when I got my show, Comedy Bang Bang, I was, let's see, this is our 5th season, so I must have been almost 40 when I got it. I was ready for a show at that point. Like I knew how to do it. I knew exactly what I would do with it, and I knew how to put it together, and I was really good in the editing room, and I was really good at writing, and just all came together by then. Whereas before, I don't think I would have been really ready for it.
Right, I got my MSNBC show when I was 40, same exact time, and I was definitely nervous, no question about
Right.
it. But I'd had all this
You had
time.
all the experience. You'd
to-
had the, what do they say, 10,000 hours? What is it? How many hours is it?
It's 10,000
Is
hours.
it 10,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the first MSNBC show was 10,001 hours.
Right. So by then you were good.
Right. Theoretically. I wanted to give the audience one more thing, which is your sense of what was pivotal for you in order to succeed. Like, what is the thing that you did or the thing that you learned that you would pass on to people? Like, if you do this, you're going to be in okay shape.
I think it's sort of something back to what I was talking about before of my career didn't really take off in a new direction until I started doing things just for the fun of it, instead of trying to sort of do things that my agents wanted me to do, or they wanted me to become a big, successful Hollywood screenwriter. So here's all the jobs that I should have taken, and I took them, and the movies never got made, and I was really artistically unsatisfied until I just started doing stuff for fun, like producing the show that I produced at the UCB for 10 years, or putting out the podcast, not thinking anyone would ever listen to it, that now, millions and millions of people listen to, or, doing the Between Two Ferns stuff. Like I said, we just put it up on the internet, not ever thinking that we would do anything with it. Until I started doing that stuff, which really reconnected me back into why I first started doing comedy, that's when everything sort of took off into the level that it is now. And so I would say to people, just put out stuff. Just put out stuff that you think is funny.
All right, that's an awesome takeaway. And what's next, by the way?
Next, I'm producing a show called Bajillion Dollar Properties.
I do play racquetball with David Caruso.
You want to do it here, mister?
Which is on CISO.com, which is NBC Universal's new streaming comedy app, which has all the Kids in the Hall and Monty Python. They also have a lot of original shows. And Bajillion Dollar Properties is a show that my wife, Kulapti Lysau, created and executive produces. And it's a really funny parody of
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Sort of $1 Million Listing. I don't know if you ever watched the real estate shows.
Oh, I hate those. I can't stand those.
Well,
Sorry.
then you're gonna love watching them being taken down.
Okay, good.
But
I'm gonna make my wife watch it.
It's like about 6 rich, really absurd brokers, realty brokers in Los Angeles, and them trying to sell a house. It's kind of like Reno 911. Tom and Ben of Reno 911 also produce it. And it's sort of like Reno 911 set in the real estate market, where we have a lot of guest stars like Josh Groban and Dave Foley and Weird Al Yankovic and Adam Scott and Jason Mantzoukas, and they're all trying to buy houses or sell houses with these insane brokers.
Yeah, is there this thing I can't stand about those shows is when they walk in and go, "Oh my God!"
Have you ever walked into a house though and you've just known and you said, "Oh my God"? I mean, what about the place that you walked into when you bought it?
First of all, almost every house I've ever been in, I've rented. So it was more like, oh my God.
I have to live here?
Okay, I guess so.
This is all I can afford?
Yeah,
I get it.
But I'm looking forward to your show.
Right.
And like I said, I'm going to make my wife watch it. All right,
Okay.
Scott Aukerman, thank you, man.
so much.
Appreciate it.